just agree with the Amazon Basics Neoprene dumbbells. If you're looking for some light dumbbells, not the heavier ones, like 50, 55, 60 or higher, you're looking for the range of 1 through 8 pounds, like a 1 pound, a 2 pound, 3 pound. I didn't see a 9 on here for some reason. Maybe they just didn't have them. And then they jumped to 10, 12, 15, and 20. So really the lighter range. So, if you're trying to rehabilitate, like an injury or something like a shoulder, or you're just, maybe you've been in the hospital and you can't really lift that much weight, or you're just starting out, this is a good kind of lower end pound range to consider. So they are made of cast iron. So just know that there is metal in them, make them heavy. And even though they don't look like it, because they've coated this with a neoprene coating, which makes them, I won't say it makes them soft, but they're just really easy and really pleasant to grip. Plus they can do lots of cool colors with that too. Couple other things to notice, they do have a hexagon shape, which I think is really clever, because the big advantage to that is when you set them down, they won't roll off. Because I don't know if you've ever been in the gym, you put a dumbbell down, a lot of times it can just start rolling off, depending how level the floor is. And the other thing I like about these is that the end caps are, they did print the pounds on the ends. I've seen weights where they print them over here, or they're stamped or something. I think that just wears out over time, so I really like that they did that to the end. So I expect that to stay legible for a long time. So anyway, yeah, if you're looking for a light pair of dumbbells, like for rehabilitation or something, or you just want to start out, do a little toning or something, I think this is a great set. Now, if you do a lot of weight training, you start having a shoulder issue, I want to bring up one other resource, the 6-minute torn rotator cuff solution for seniors. It says for seniors, but I wouldn't worry about that. It's really for anybody. If you have any kind of a shoulder pain, or if you specifically torn your rotator cuff, this is a good resource. And I'll tell you why. If you have any kind of shoulder issue, you need to make sure you at least do one exercise for your rotator cuff. And I'll tell you why. The rotator cuff's big job is to stabilize your shoulder joint, because the shoulder is a very shallow ball and socket joint. Now that's unlike your hip, that's really it's really a deep ball and socket joint. It doesn't rely heavily on the muscles to support it. The shoulder is all about muscles to support it. And of all the muscles that support your shoulder, it's the rotator cuff. So if you get more stability, you strengthen your rotator cuff, you're going to get more stability in there, and things get less irritated, and sometimes this vague, nondescript shoulder pain goes away. But anyway, so real briefly, tells you all about the rotator cuff, what it is, what it does. Lots of pictures, real visual learner. Had a good question and answer section. If you do have a tear, what are the symptoms of a rotator cuff tear? Any arm maneuvers that might indicate I have a tear? Where is the tear at? Are there different kinds of tears? And here's a good, I have a rotator cuff tear and I'm in a lot of pain. I need surgery, right? Well, not necessarily, and I'll tell you why. So to answer that question, they look at studies. They say if you take a group of people with a torn rotator cuff, right, and you measure the size of their tear, and then you run a visual analog scale to see how much pain they're in, you would think, okay, you have a group of people, I know how big their tears are and how bad they're hurting. So you're thinking, hey, the bigger the tears, the more they're in pain. Well, that's actually not what they find in these studies. You can have a big tear and you can have virtually no pain. They're asymptomatic tears. But what they find is there's people with big tears that are hardly hurting, and they find there's people with small tears that are hurting a lot. And then, like say, there's a group of people, a whole new set of people that are asymptomatic, even though they have a big tear. And that's well documented in the literature. When they do MRIs on 100 people with no shoulder pain, they find, there's a certain percentage that have asymptomatic tears. So that's why you don't really want to jump into surgery, even though you have a tear and you have pain. You don't really know that that's your problem. You could have an asymptomatic tear and there's something else that's giving you your pain. And likewise, you could have a small tear that's really mechanically not too big of a problem, but it gives you a lot of pain. You're thinking, oh, I have a surgery. Well, not necessarily. So just some things to think about. What happens if I leave my rotator cuff tear alone? That's something good to know. Is a torn rotator cuff set me up for arthritis? And here's a good one. How does exercise compare to surgery when it comes to treating a torn rotator cuff? So the only way you can scientifically answer that is by doing what's called a randomized controlled trial. That's the highest form of proof in medicine that a treatment is actually effective. So this book is actually very evidence-based, compiled all the studies, all the randomized controlled trials comparing surgery to exercise program. So let's say you take 100 people with a torn rotator cuff, 50 you randomly assign to surgery, the other 50 you randomly assign to a good exercise program. And then you follow them over time. You follow them over 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years. There's some really good long-term follow-up studies. Basically, to make a long story short, you're going to end up at the same place no matter what you do. And that's according to the randomized controlled trials. There is a good exercise program that you can use just to strengthen your rotator cuff, even if you don't have a tear. There's a beginning, intermediate, advanced program. So yeah, pretty good resource there. But hey, if you're just looking for a good pair of dumbbells, light ones are what you're looking for, I think this is a great investment. So check them out.